Tune in to the Real Estate Roundup with the River Counties Association of Realtors. Join us every Saturday at 8:30 a.m. on the Mix 104.1 as we explore the latest in real estate. Whether you're buying, selling, or just love real estate, don't miss our expert advice and exclusive insights. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and let's explore the dynamic world of real estate and our vibrant River Counties community. Catch Real Estate Roundup and make your property dreams a reality. Welcome to the River Counties Real Estate Roundup, and today Lisa Calfee is here to discuss online values. Lisa, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to help everybody kind of understand, everybody always wants to know what their home is worth, and obviously you call a realtor and it's sometimes different what you see online. So let's help everybody understand the myth of online valuations and what they really should be looking at, right? Okay.
So probably one of the most famous ones is the infamous Zestimate on Zillow.
Right.
And you can go online and you can see your own home, you can claim it, and you can tweak it and put in different things in there about maybe you finished some rooms in the basement and it was showing that it was only a 3-bedroom and now you've got a 4-bedroom. So you can tweak it a little bit, and it's using some online algorithms. We live in the world of AI now, and we're kind of in that genre where we're seeing everything is kind of run by some kind of online type feature. So there's not someone sitting behind a keyboard going, wait a minute, here's all the features of this home. I think it's worth this.
Sure.
So it's really just plugging that data into a massive database and spitting a number out without looking at your home, without seeing anything to do with it. So it's nothing more than I'm trying to think of something that I compare that to. You could go online and try on a bunch of different haircuts on an AI app and go, oh, this might look good on me. This might look good on me. And then when you finally get it, you're like, wow, it doesn't look anything like that, right? So it's definitely not something you can take and depend on.
Right.
And it's interesting because it will change as well. You might go see it one day and then you'll go 3 or 4 days later and it'll change. And our market's not changing that rapidly.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So that's definitely one of those things to watch for.
Well, and it, like you said, it's not walking through your home, where the realtor obviously walks through your home, sees the condition, gets a feel for it, understands the neighborhood. This is everything just electronic, that it's, because it gets into what, public records? And
it does. It looks at tax records, and it may take and consume a lot of data from their own website, right?
Okay, right.
They're looking at data from their website and data from the tax records. And let's start with tax records. So tax records are not also going to be a clear representation of your home.
Right.
So you would be surprised, and I would encourage our listeners to go into the tax records and just look at what data it actually has. You can go right onto the county website and you can look your own property up.
Okay.
So no matter what county you live in, every county tax assessor's office is going to have a site where all that information is housed, and you can look your own property up. It's interesting to do that because then you can see what the tax assessor's office has on record for your house. So let's just say that you built your house and you submitted your plans and you got your building permit, yada, yada, yada. And at that time, you were building a 1,700 square foot 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Mm-hmm. And then you decided later, you know what, we're going to add on this separate garage and we're going to put an entire apartment above it. Or we're going to put a whole nother room above it. We're going to attach it to the house so you have access. So now you've increased your square footage, you've increased your value,
right,
and it doesn't show that on the tax records. And so the tax records are probably 50% of the time they're right.
Okay.
Because they can be based on very old information.
Sure.
And when tax assessors, we recently in Bradley County, for instance, had a reassessment done on Bradley County properties. Those tax assessors didn't come knock on your door and say, can I come inside?
No, they
right?
did not.
They did not. It's a drive-by at best, even if it's a drive-by.
Sure.
And so that data, again, is not going to be an accurate picture of exactly what's in your house under the roof. Just like something that you're going to see online to press a button and go, show me the value of my home. That's not
Right.
the way that that's going to be determined. So as a real estate agent, when I get to someone's home, the first thing I do before we even start discussing selling the home is I want to walk through the house. I want to see everything in the house so that I can judge, okay, am I working with, because my first point of looking is going to be a previous time when maybe it was listed for sale, and I can see some of that data. And then I also am going to look at the tax records. So I'm going to use multiple sources, and then I'm going to see it with my own eyes.
Right.
Because I've got to see exactly what you've done. I mean, you might have imported an Italian tile in and put it in the floors, and you might have done this massive update to the house, and we've got to see where the value lies with those additions.
Well, and I think that's the thing is that people get misled sometimes with, like you said, the tax records because they're not always up to speed, estimates online. And not that it, like you said, not that it's all wrong all the time, but you have to be careful with that. And then getting the professional in, such as yourself, obviously, to come in because you're in the market. You know, you see what's happening in the market where tax records, by the time, you know, you sell your house, close on it today, the tax records are not updated tomorrow, you know, so it's a lagging trail effect, you know, before the tax assessor gets all of that in there. So I think that those are some great points that people have to realize. It's a best guess, but not an accurate guess.
That's right. And I had my personal home for sale this past year, and it was really interesting to me because I was looking at it from a homeowner's point of view.
Sure.
And I was going on to Zillow and I was looking at it just to see what was happening with that dial of what my current value was. And when I tell you it was moving rapidly, it was unbelievable. I would check it about every other day and it would move and it would do a different value. And so when you list your house and you list it and the Zestimate is way lower than your list price, your first inclination is going to be panic. Well, people are going to think that I'm trying to pay more for, you know, charge them more for the house than what it's worth. And I see that. That's a valid concern because that's the public's facing website that they can see, and there is a lot of belief in that. But I noticed on mine, if I lowered the price on mine, the Zillow Zestimate also adjusted. So I never got closer to the Zestimate. I never got closer because every time I moved the dial, it moved the dial.
You got the gap,
So there wasn't a surefire way to get that number trued up. Because there was just that whatever algorithm was in there, it was continuously adjusting that price. So you are going to have times, and the best way to combat that if you're planning on selling your home is to go in there and claim that home as a homeowner. And make adjustments because it'll let you make adjustments. So if the information they have on, sometimes it won't even show that it has bedrooms. It'll be missing the number of bedrooms. Go in there and adjust it several months prior to putting your house on the market. So at least it's got the most accurate information to work with, and maybe it will close the gap of that Zestimate price and what you're going to be asking for it, because we can't control that Zestimate. Understand that we have zero control over that, and that's the only way you can do anything is just to claim it as an owner. As a real estate agent, when we put your information on your home whenever it's listed for sale, we put it into our local MLS system, which are multiple listing service. It shoots it out to these websites, and then from there we cannot adjust that Zestimate. That Zestimate is there. It's their data. We can't move it one way or the other. And so we are just working with, you know, whatever they're throwing out there. And so if you look at it now and then you go and you look at the tax records and you look at all that, you're just looking at some information and some data. And so that's not what you want to hang your hat on.
And like you said, because in our multiple listing service, you're getting real-time data. You know, you're getting houses that are on the market right now, houses that just went under contract, houses that closed within the last number of months. So you got more accurate information than what the Zestimates are going to do or any other algorithm out there is going to be able to keep up with.
That's right. That's right.
So let's talk about this. A lot of people say, well, you know, why can two homes on the same street have different online values? You know, why do estimates jump overnight? And that kind of leads to what you were just talking about, right? But also, I think people need to be careful is that your house is not your neighbor's house, you know, and just because they're your neighbor doesn't mean you've been in their house either. So they might have those upgrades, like you said, that you're not aware of because you don't see that online. And that's just something for people to keep in mind. And I think that's where, in the history of our business, a lot of people that sell their house on their own leave money on the table because they're not getting the real facts from a professional like yourself. they are looking online on estimates and they're going with that number, and yet they think, well, if I hire a realtor, I'm going to give up more money. But in the end, as we've always proven it in our industry, they actually leave more money on the table.
They do.
You know?
They do. And what's interesting is that there's a lot of factors that go into what a house would have sold for, because it only takes one buyer that wants to buy that house.
Right.
And it could have been that buyer that bought that house, if you think that it sold for more than what it should have, maybe they were a cash buyer. They were in a personal situation where they needed to get a house and they were on a time crunch. And so
Right.
they were willing to throw whatever money the seller wanted at it, and they weren't worried about an appraisal.
Right.
So it wasn't necessarily the true value that they were paying, because they didn't get an appraisal, because it wasn't required that they have one, because it would be for their own informational purposes since they're paying cash. There's no bank requiring it.
Right.
So sometimes when you see a house that sold for more on the same street, it could be that kind of a circumstance where it sold for more because the buyer was willing to give it.
Right.
And they didn't have to worry about the appraiser coming along saying whether or not it was worth it.
True.
And so that could be one factor that you're looking at there. And sometimes it can also work in the opposite direction too.
Right.
You can have a home that sold for way less because someone was in a life situation where they needed to sell, and they needed to sell quickly.
Right.
And that can affect value in the same way. So like you said, no two houses are exactly the same. I mean, we're going to have cookie cutter homes, but if they're brand new, yes, they may be exactly the same. But after someone's lived in it for a while,
Right.
it's not exactly the same, because it depends on how have they taken care of it, how lived in has it been, did they have damage to the home, or were they meticulous with it, did they go ahead and do a few upgrades on their own. So there's always going to be those little things that are going to differentiate, and sometimes it could be the way the lot lays.
Right.
You could have a house 3 doors down from you, exact same floor plan, but your lot is a lot more level,
Right.
and maybe they have a driveway that's super steep. And so that's going to make it have less appeal to buyers. So it may sell for less.
Right. And you as a professional realtor can pick up the phone after that house closed and you're going to list, the other person's house. You can ask that realtor, hey, I noticed that house was $10,000 under market value. Do you mind sharing me why? Obviously we're not going to find that out while it's on the market, but afterwards, we could probably find that out from the realtor to help the next seller, so you don't have to keep lowering the values in the neighborhood, because it does become a trickle effect. Everybody thinks, well, that's the new benchmark, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it is, right?
That's exactly right. And we do that with other real estate professionals. We do call each other. In fact, appraisers will call us and ask
Right.
us about a sale that we were involved in. If they think that if they're having a difficult time trying to figure out the values in an area, they may call us and say, hey, I noticed that you sold this house, and can you tell me a little bit more about it? Because maybe we sold it for a little bit higher because there were closing costs that the seller was going to cover for the buyer,
Right.
and they needed to buffer that a little bit. And that may be some information that an appraiser didn't have on the back end, because they don't have a copy of the contract.
Right.
They don't know all the terms.
Sure.
And so appraisers will call us and ask us questions about something we were involved in a sale with, and we'll call each other. And I'll do that when I'm pricing a home for sale. I'll call and ask, hey, I know that you just closed on that house, and I was just wondering a little bit more if you could tell me a little bit more about it. And
Right.
sometimes getting all that information will help us with the next seller in the neighborhood that's wanting to sell, and maybe we can see from data that it was on the market for 40 days, but how many showings did they have in those 40 days?
Right.
And so licensed professionals are going to have that conversation with each other and work together and just kind of share that information so we can do the best for our clients in the future.
Well, like you said, sellers are in situations sometimes, and so are buyers. So buyers will pay a little bit more sometimes because they got to get in, and the seller sometimes will just want to cut it because they're in dire straits and they need to get out. So
Absolutely.
it's not always just the number that's the market value. There's a reason behind why they put it at that number too. So
Yes.
give everybody your contact information, so as we're in the middle of our show here, so they know how to reach out to you.
Absolutely. My cell is 423-802-0875, and I can also be found on the web at calfeeandcompany.com. Lisa Calfee with the Source Real Estate Group.
Awesome. So let's talk about on the seller side, about how a seller can kind of hurt themselves if they come out overpriced, longer days on market. Talk about the issues with that, why sellers need to be careful of when they enter the market, that they're coming at the right price, that a professional as yourself recommends to them. It's not about testing the market, but you got to come out at the right price, right?
Well, I think I hear that more often than not. Let's just test the market and
Right.
see where we're going to land. And you have an opportunity to make a first impression.
Right.
And that's the first 10 to 14 days that you hit the market. And that's when you're new. So if you're a buyer or you've ever been a buyer, you set searches up for yourself so you'll get notified when that perfect house you're looking for hits the market on one of the major websites.
Right.
And so it's going to be dinging your phone telling you that it has popped up. And we want to present our best foot forward whenever that happens. When it's new on the market, you want it to be appealing to a potential buyer. Well, if you've set your price so much higher than other like properties for sale, but you don't really have the goods inside that house to support that, then you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Because the longer you stay on the market, the longer it's all a mental thing for people.
Oh, yeah.
And whenever you see something that's been on the market for a long time, whether you know average days on the market or not, you're still thinking, well, what's wrong with that house?
Right.
Why hasn't someone bought it? And then you see 4 or 5 houses in the same neighborhood. Well, what's wrong with that neighborhood? Why is everybody moving out of that neighborhood? Now, there might be 150 houses in that neighborhood and 4 or 5 for sale right now is no big deal.
Right.
But as a buyer, you may start thinking, wow, why is everybody vacating this neighborhood? What's happening? Is something coming that we don't know about? What's happening? And so when you're pricing your property, you want your property to get its most showings in that first 14 days. You don't want it to sit on the market. And as far as I'm concerned, I just sold a house, and keeping a house completely straight and clean all the time so anyone can walk in at any minute. I mean, there are those of y'all that are very good at that, but when you're working or you've got animals and you've got kids, that is not the most fun thing in the world. So who wants to have to keep their house all straight and clean for 3 months while you're waiting for that perfect showing? You want showings to come, and you want them to come so that you can see some movement. Right. And so when you hire your agent, you really want your agent to be honest with you about price. Yep. You know, if you come to me and tell me you want to list your price for $100,000 more than what I believe that it's going to sell for based on what I can see as the data in front of me, I'm going to be honest with you and say, it's not going to sell for that, and we would not be in your best interest to list it that much higher than what it's bringing, because you can't just really slap a price on something and it stick. Was there a time when people were doing that and it was working? Yes. And that was in the past. That's not where we're at right now. We have shifted to a buyer's market. So it's so important that the price that you put on a house is based on what an appraiser is going to come along and say in the long run, this is what we can support, because most of our buyers are going to be getting a mortgage. They're going to be getting a loan, and the bank is the one that requires that appraisal. And so the bank's just getting that appraisal to protect themselves. They want to know that they're lending money on a house that's worth what they're lending. Right. And so that appraiser is held to a very high standard. So those appraisers have to back up their decision on value, and they have to back it up with finding other like properties that have sold that are similar that can support that value. So we could slap whatever price on something, but then in the long run, you could really end up with this high hope that, oh, look at me, I got this great price. And then an appraiser comes along and says, no, I'm sorry, this is not what it appraises for. And then you're going to have to lower the price anyway. Right. So coming out of the gate with the correct pricing is so important for many, many reasons through the entire process of selling your home.
Well, you end up leaving as a seller more money on the table if you come out on the wrong price because, as you said, the reduction, as opposed to getting the right price. You're going to hit those attractive buyers right off the bat, where a lot of people think, well, I'm selling myself short. But in the long run, starting at that higher price and you just keep knocking it down, then, like you said, people are going to think, what's wrong with this house? You know, is there a problem with this house? Why is it on the market for 90 days, you know? And you see that price reduce. And in the long run, had you priced it right at the beginning, your gap would not have been that much different, right?
That's right. That's right. And you'd had a lot of less heartache getting there.
And stress, definitely. And
because when you price it higher than what it's worth, and then when you get that offer that is the price it should be, you're going to get your feelings hurt.
Oh yeah.
And you're going to get somewhat offended. Yep. How dare someone offer me $75,000 less than asking.
Right.
Well, maybe they're offering you what the actual value of the house is and should have been from the get-go.
Right.
And that's where you're creating yourself more strife.
Yeah. And sellers need to understand that, don't be offended at the offers you get in, but be realistic. And we understand as a seller and a buyer, it's emotional for them, right? But then the professional is yourself, you're the rational one. That's where you come into play to help them get refocused and understand that offer is not meant as an insult. It's meant as, this is what the market value is. This is why we shouldn't have started that high.
That's right. And most people don't walk into a car dealership and pay the sticker price.
Yeah.
They want to negotiate a little bit, want to haggle. Everybody wants to feel like they're getting a good deal.
Yeah.
And so, really, is anything a good deal in the real estate market? Probably not. I mean,
Right.
you're gonna pay what it's worth. You're not gonna pay more, but you're not necessarily probably gonna find a house that you're gonna walk out with $50,000 or $60,000 worth of equity from the closing table.
Right.
It's just not that kind of a market. Yeah. But we definitely want to feel like we're getting a fair deal.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. Being treated right and not selling ourselves short and not overpaying for it either. So. And buyers, the same thing, right? I mean, on the buyer side, they need to watch as far as the inflated prices, but that's also then too, where the buyer not doing it on their own, but coming to you as the professional to help them understand the value of that property. Instead of going again to the sale by owners and just think, oh, well, if the seller is asking that and they don't have a realtor, it must be a fair value. But that's not always the case.
No.
So they need to buyer beware, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing the same thing on the buyer side as we are on the seller side, just with a little bit of a different vision. We're looking at the comps and what has sold and what should you pay for this house. I had someone recently that they loved the house, and it was a uncommon situation in today's market, and there were multiple offers, and they were willing to go to a certain price, but the other offers were higher, and they pretty much wanted to know, what do you think? And I said, if this was 2020, where we were having to throw money at a house to get it, I would say, do what you feel like in your heart you want to do, but we're not in that. And I would ask you, do you love this house that much that you don't want to lose it? And they said, no, we'll look for another one. Then I wouldn't be, throwing money at it that you're not comfortable with, because I can't support the value based on what I'm seeing that has sold in the area. I can't support more than what you were going to offer. Right. And so I don't want to put you in a bad situation, because as a buyer, you get into that contract, you've already spent money for a home inspection.
Sure.
And so if it gets to appraisal and the seller says, I'm not lowering it, I'm going to sell it for what I want to sell it for, I don't care if it doesn't meet appraisal, you've just lost money.
Right.
And so I don't want you as a buyer to lose your money. I want you to go in with confidence.
Yeah. Yeah, because every contract doesn't mean it's always going to get to the finish line, right? Because you got so many other steps in between the initial offer, the signed offer, and then the closing date where you said the appraiser, the home inspection, everything else too. So you're right that if a buyer keeps chasing properties that are overpriced and it's not going to appraise out, they're spending $300, $400, $500 each time, on inspections and everything else. So I think that's great advice, that they need to be careful that they don't just jump at something, because you're right, we're not in that market anymore. We're not, and unless you're putting 25% down or more, the appraisal is going to come back around, that it has to clear the bank, and the banks are going to rely on that. So. Any other advice you have as far as from the appraisal side or anything else with our buyers and sellers, that they should look at based on what they're looking at online? I think you gave some great advice, is go into there and update your property, so at least you can help. If we all can help that system, hopefully one day it will get much more better than what it is, and not kind of be so far different of where we really feel the market is.
I would say that nothing is going to replace a professional sitting down and looking at data with pen and paper and really doing the research. Yep. There's not an algorithm or an AI platform that's going to give you what an actual trained professional can give you. As far as your value of your home, which is your largest asset, we say that almost every week on this show. Sure. We recognize that this is a large asset that you have. It's a huge decision. So whether you're buying or you're selling, it is worth it to have a trained professional that is sitting down and looking at all factors to find the value of your home, and not just trusting some, computer system that's going to spit something out for you. That's not how we do things in our industry. That's not how appraisers do things. The appraisers are not just throwing everything into their computer and it spits out the appraisal. They're doing all this by hand, and they're going to the home and they're visiting the home and they're walking through it and they're measuring. So nothing's going to replace that professional attention. And don't trust what you're going to see online from really any source. Have that trained professional that can give you your value. And you may need your value for many different reasons. It may not just be that you're going to sell. You may just be curious about what your home is worth, because maybe you want to do some improvements to it and you don't want to over improve it. And so, that's something I'll do for anybody that's really curious. I don't mind spending a little time with you and giving you some professional insight into that. And so that's the biggest thing that people need to really focus on is that nothing's going to replace the relationship with that professional that can sit down and really look at things and go through the numbers.
Right. And you touch on one thing, and we wrap up our last couple minutes here. Sometimes the seller is just looking to refinance, right? And that appraisal might come in different than if they were calling you to sell the house.
Yes.
Because they have a huge amount of equity in there, and banks are in the business for lending money, so they're going to give you a little bit more of that cushion, right, to pull more money out of that property. Doesn't necessarily mean that's the true market value as of today, right?
That's right. Those are different types of appraisals. And so we don't necessarily use those refi appraisals as the golden. And I always tell my buyers, when you buy a house, save that appraisal because it's got great information on it. It's got your room sizes. It's got measurements. Say you were going to go do flooring. Just pull that appraisal out. It's got your measurements for your floors. You can use that and not have to spend a bunch of time measuring every room. So it's got good information. Save it. You're going to need it one day.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so buyer sellers beware, right? Just
buyer
call
sellers
Lisa.
Beware. Call me. I'll help
plan.
you. Don't trust what you see online.
Yeah, definitely. Any last points that you want to let them know as we wrap up here? I mean, as you talked about, the biggest gap, that we see between online pricing and everything else. Any other last tips? I think you covered a lot of great topics and information on this. I hope people really do pay attention to this.
I think we just need to we need to continue to realize we're in a very healthy market. Don't be discouraged as a buyer or a seller. As a buyer, you've got a lot of inventory to choose from. As a seller, that's just healthy competition, and it is a good time for both sides.
And be patient.
Be patient, and that gives you more time to make your plans. And then and people are negotiating a little bit more, giving a little bit here, giving a little bit there, and so that's a healthy market. That's where we're at, and it is a great time to do anything that you're thinking about doing. And our interest rates are budging a little bit, and so it sounds like 2026 is going to be a really healthy year for real estate. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, don't hesitate. Reach out and let's just see what that next step looks like.
That is some great information, Lisa. Please give everybody your contact information.
Absolutely. Lisa Calfee with the Source Real Estate Group, calfeeandcompany.com, 423-802-0875.
Lisa, as always, thank you for the great information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you imagine a career with flexibility and limitless income potential? It's possible by becoming a Realtor. The River Counties Association of Realtors, located right here in Cleveland, Tennessee, is ready to help you unlock your potential. We're your go-to resource for guiding you to obtain your Tennessee real estate license. We're more than just realtors. We're a vital part of our community. Partnering with local charities, we work tirelessly to make a difference. Join the River Counties Association of Realtors today, where your career can thrive and community can too. Visit rivercounties.com or call 423-476-5912. Your new path awaits.